Yeah.
That's on. Chat away. Just leave it on.
Okay.
Chat, chat, chat.
Hi, everyone. We are about to start, so if you could take your place, take your seat. This is a press conference with a focus on how we respond to a second Trump presidency. So just to make sure you're at the right thing, that's what this is, and we'll start in about a minute. Or we'll start maybe now. Yeah, 3 minutes. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Allie Rosenbluth. I'm the U.S. manager at Oil Change International, and I'm here today with 4 lovely panelists in our response to the devastating news that we got on Wednesday morning that Donald Trump has been reelected as the upcoming president of the United States. And this, as I said, was devastating as a climate movement, but also holding the Black, Brown, Indigenous, low-income people, trans folks, LGBTQ folks, people all over the world in the global South, frontline communities everywhere who will be impacted by the policies of a second Trump administration. This is horrible, and we've been here before. We are stronger, and we are ready to fight for whatever wins that we can make for our climate and for our communities across the world. And with me are some incredible leaders who are part of many fights, who will continue to fight despite the news that we got on Wednesday that Donald Trump was going to be our president. So we also know that Biden's presidency is not over yet, that he has about 2 months to cement his climate legacy and do as much possible defense that he can to ensure a just future. We know that he could deny permits for multiple fossil fuel projects, LNG export terminals, the Dakota Access Pipeline. He can come here today at COP29 and commit to an NCQG of at least $1 trillion. He could release an ambitious, nationally determined contribution that sets a tone for global North countries that fossil fuel phase-out is key for climate justice. And we are going to hear more about the many actions that the Biden administration can take in these next 2 months in order to support communities as we enter a second Trump presidency. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Jacob Johns with the Wisdom Keepers delegation to share his response to Donald Trump's reelection.
My name is Jacob Johns. I'm Hopi and Akimeratam. I'm a lead organizer for a Wisdom Keepers delegation. We are an international collective of Indigenous wisdom keepers and activists that co-create contemporary climate policy that we advance underneath the umbrella of the UNFCCC. As an American citizen, as a Native American, we're just devastated to see a second Trump presidency. The amount of votes that Trump got this year exceeded the ones that he got last, and It's just a blow to us. You know, we live in this world where we think that racism and misogyny and patriarchy is a thing of the past, and yet American citizens vote hand over hand for a convicted felon to run for the White House. And you know, the environmental protections that he's trying to strip domestically are going to be devastating, and they're going to have massive impacts across the world. He has taken us out of the Paris Agreement before and plans to do it again, and also including taking us out of the UNFCCC. This is a scary, scary situation for us domestically, especially for Native Americans who make up 2% of the population in the US. This is devastating for us as being frontline communities. I think as the US will possibly remove itself from the UNFCCC, that this itself brings a positive light for the rest of the world. We all know that the United States acts as obstructionists in these international spaces, often blocking logical, progressive climate policy that could do massive, massive good for the world. And the US will come in and say no, or obstruct in other ways that use their political power in order to deny climate and not fund the adaptation and mitigation that the world so desperately needs. We call on the Biden administration to make bold steps as we look at putting forth our new NDC and call for the U.S. to put forth its fair share that we owe to the rest of the world for the devastation that countries who have had nothing to do with the climate catastrophe has done. We want solidarity for our sisters and our brothers in the global south, and we call on the Biden administration to make moves, to make bold, severe leadership here in these global stages. I think that we have the power now to unite globally as citizens who are going to be at the will of a fascist dictator. We have you, our sisters and our brothers across the world, to lean on for support and for strength. And we encourage you with our prayers and our hearts to give you all of the power that you need. And I hope that we can reciprocate those feelings back to our domestic friends.
Thank you, Jacob. Next up, applause. Next up, we have Jamie Minden from 0 Hour.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm 21 years old. I'm a student, and I'm also the acting executive director at 0 Hour. We're a youth climate justice organization. So I just want to frame a little bit the moment that we're in. This was the first year in which the average global temperature rise, on average, passed 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is the limit that scientists have been screaming from the rooftops that we cannot pass, and yet we passed it. People around the world are facing disastrous effects of the climate crisis, and in the US, imperialism and wealth shields us from suffering climate disaster like our brothers and sisters in the global south do, but it is still very clear that the climate crisis is upon us. Our 0 Hour Arkansas chapter is reeling from the effects of 2 unseasonable tornadoes last week. Every state in the United States except for Alaska and Kentucky are experiencing a drought. The day after Election Day in DC was 80 degrees in November. This is extremely unseasonable. And it's projected that 4 billion tons of carbon will enter the atmosphere with the Trump presidency, which would be a death sentence to our planet. We are experiencing many threats under this new Trump administration, threats to our basic rights, threats to our democracy, threats to people who are either recent immigrants to the US or folks who are hoping to migrate. We expect that there will be a lot of humanitarian issues as this increases due to the climate crisis. And climate justice is a youth priority, and this new administration is immediately intending on opposing the priorities of youth. Young people refuse to go quietly into the night. We will fight for a just climate future till the end. And we've faced a Trump administration before. 0 Hour was founded in 2017 alongside many youth climate justice movements under the pressure of a Trump presidency. And we know how this goes, and yet we know that we will face much more extreme opposition over the next 4 years than we have in the past. So we are facing a need for global solidarity. World leaders cannot continue to hide behind the US's lack of action. If we want a livable planet, other countries are going to have to take the lead. We also want to call on Biden to be a climate leader. The Democratic Party is lacking in climate leadership that addresses the climate crisis, and they have been recklessly expanding fossil fuel permits over the past 4 years. Before Trump takes office, President Biden must reject all pending liquefied natural gas permits and stop the expansion of fossil fuels. Our climate is on the brink of collapse, and it's sheer madness that politicians continue to expand fossil fuels and subsidize them. In this moment, young people are feeling determined. We are fighting for our planet because we are facing some of the worst consequences of the unrelenting greed of these selfish politicians, and we're feeling optimism, hope, and love for our planet.
Thank you, Jamie. Next up, we have Dean Bebe from PowerShift Africa and Don't Gas Africa.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It is projected that by 2030, we are looking at 720 million Africans without energy access. Now, that being said, money has become such an important topic right here at COP29. And looking at that, Africa essentially is at crossroads, with the continent's future balanced on the precariousness on the expected decisions in climate finance negotiations. The decision will be made against the backdrop of the return of the US President-elect Donald Trump to the global stage and a potential second withdrawal of the US from climate finance commitments. This casts a long shadow over Africa's climate goals, especially in securing quality, adequate, and accessible finance. For Africa, this is not just a matter of climate action. It is about life, dignity, and justice. Trump's previous retreat from global climate action undermined climate finance and eroded trust in climate negotiations. It also fundamentally stalled necessary financial flows. Should he adopt similar policies, most countries will most likely damage climate finance commitments for Africa's nationally determined contributions. And this again undermines the commitments that were made during the Africa Climate Summit, where we saw a group of African countries tripling their renewable energy commitments. Now, this will not be progressive or unlock Africa's developmental pathways if it is not complemented with the right quality and quantity of climate finance coming into the African continent. Now, it is likely with the president-elect that the US will not pay its fair share of climate finance under the new Trump government. It is also possible that other countries will be hiding behind the United States' actions, or rather should we say inaction. So the question becomes, will the rest of the world follow Trump's lead and just give up on the planet by default? If they do, does this mean that we're going to have less NCQG ambitions? A less ambitious NCQG means essentially the NDCs coming out of Africa will not pave the way for us to tackle the energy crisis. A less ambitious NCQG would mean a devastating scenario for the people of Africa. Climate finance coming to the continent is inappropriate, insufficient, and undignified, and of low quality. It falls short of a dignified, just transition to introduce cleaner energy sources as a basis for energy security and development. World leaders at COP29 must ask themselves whether they want to join the camp of climate skeptics and their attitudes, or whether they actually want to fix the climate crisis, or should I say the climate collapse. The test is for rich countries, and now it is the time to show up. Under the Biden administration, the US paused thousands of its LNG permits, and under Trump, his first America approach, this pause may be essentially lifted. And this would set the stage for a more aggressive oil and gas extraction, including fracking. Is this the path the world wants to take? If rich countries believe in the climate emergency, then they should be willing to pay more than their fair share of climate finance, definitely not less. Rich countries can no longer hide behind the United States. Whatever the cost, paying ambitious climate action will be far cheaper than the cost of paying for a full-scale climate catastrophe. With each passing day, we get an inch closer to that idea of a world that is at a climate collapse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean. And last off on our panel is Ben Golliff with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Thank you. Climate diplomacy doesn't stop for a climate denier on a boiling planet. Before Trump hands over the keys to the Oval Office to big oil, the Biden administration needs to use the next 2 months to seal a climate legacy and put in a bulwark of protections against Trump's ravages. Here at COP29, we need to see action from John Podesta, Biden's top climate advisor, announcing way more than just singing the praises of the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, the commitment of funds to renewables that the administration has already put forward. We need to see the Biden administration actually put their money where their mouth is, to show up as a constructive force in the development of the NCQG and pay up its fair share of climate finance, and to put out a really strong, bold, science-based NDC target. Next week, Biden's team is going to join world leaders at the OECD, and we need them to show up promising to stop export credit agencies from financing oil and gas. That would end $41 billion in finance for oil and gas, a huge contribution. At home, Biden has the power to stop fossil fuel expansion, to follow through on the commitment to phase out fossil fuels that world leaders agreed to last year. That needs to include rejecting mega-polluting LNG projects like CP2 and the Dakota Access oil pipeline, which has been a pariah for years in the making, violating indigenous rights, polluting the climate. And as Trump is threatening to pull out of the Paris Agreement, this is the time for the Biden administration to send a crystal clear symbol to states, local governments, world leaders across the globe that the U.S. is going to be back in this, but in the meantime, there is no excuse for delay. There is no excuse for aligning the actions here at the UNFCCC with science and justice. This is the time for the grassroots on up to step up, to fill that void, to take the call and advance a just, funded, and fair transition off fossil fuels. And by the way, one last thing. At home, the Biden administration can fill judicial vacancies, and that is key. We need the legal system to be working for us as we fight back against Trump's devastating attacks on communities. We've done it before, we're gonna do it again. We had an 80% success rate in all the cross-movement litigation under Trump the first time. We can do that again, we can improve on that. So we're here in solidarity with all of our global partners, and we're going to make sure that not only are we still in, that we're gonna hold the line for justice and science.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you to our incredible panelists. We are going to move into our Q&A session, and I'm going to ask if there are any journalists, members of the media who have questions for the panelists today. I see you over here.
Thanks for doing this. I just wanted to ask Jennifer Deloy with Bloomberg News. One of you mentioned the importance of the U.S. coming forward with an NDC. What's the value in doing that now, since it would be essentially a dead letter built on, policies Trump has said he's going to undo and future initiatives that won't come to pass over the next 4 years? Is there any risk that undermines the credibility of the NDC process?
I can do it. Do you want to do it? Thank you. I can, yeah. Either?
Was it direct?
No. Okay, sorry. Great. That is a great question and an important one right now. I think that the Biden administration actually has a really fantastic opportunity to set the bar for other global north oil and gas producing countries. He can show what climate leadership should look like by releasing an NDC that has a transition to off fossil fuels that includes the U.S. paying its fair share. We need to, while we can set a model for what real climate justice looks like, what actually staying below 1.5 would look like, and that is one way in which Biden can do that.
I'll just add that it also sets a really clear roadmap for states like California that actually have been taking leadership in tackling big oil and their control in the U.S. and actually, ensuring that communities impacted by oil and gas, especially in large producing states like California, that they're actually, a huge economy on the global scale. They can be a first mover in the same way that other countries that Ali's talking about can be.
My name is Sal Jafar. I'm the CEO of ESG MENA Media in the Middle East. My question to Mr. Ben. America has spoken, and Mr. Trump has won with basically all the metrics, including popular vote. Yes, I understand that you have concerns, so are we. So, however, Mr. Trump has on his side Mr. Elon Musk, the godfather of sustainability, EVs, solar, and energy storage. What is your plan, basically, to co-op or the action plan for dealing with Mr. Trump's administration? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, others should speak into this too. Jamie, I don't know if you want to add on. But I will say, you know, the answer on climate is not Elon Musk. The answer on climate is from environmental justice communities, from the grassroots, that actually pushed Biden into office originally on promises to take leadership on climate and to phase out fossil fuels. And so that is the durable political force that's going to build towards climate justice in the U.S. I'll also say a big part of that message going in was economic justice, supporting workers and communities, advancing industrial policy. These are very, very popular policies in the U.S. And Trump's win was by a sliver of a margin, even in all of these states. And, you know, Trump is not a popular political figure. And the Democrats need to do more to align what they're offering with science and justice, and actually talk about, as they actually started to do 4 years ago, how economic justice and climate action and taking a transition away from fossil fuels benefits everyone.
Yeah, in regards to Mr. Musk, I just want to say that billionaires are not going to save us. Individuals with a lot of money always will be acting in their own self-interest, and Mr. Musk has displayed that very clearly through his refusal to back any solutions related to public transit, any solutions that would help solve the climate crisis in a way that don't make him any money. And so while it's great that some people with money are trying to put that towards climate solutions, I think we should be very wary of individuals, especially billionaires, who claim to have all the answers.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that. Sorry, I would just like to add that the marriage of corporation and government is Mussolini's definition of fascism. And in no way will a fascist future do anything to help save the planet. And by touting CEO, billionaire as being a hero in any light is a false statement. We will fight. We will continue to fight. We fought through the Biden administration, and we will fight even harder underneath another 4 years of a fascist dictator.
Bob Berwin with Inside Climate News. I have a question related to the first question, and that is, any of these things that you're asking the Biden administration to do, will any of them stick? Are any of them unreversible? Or can they be set so that they can take longer to undo? You know, a couple of years, 2-3 years of legal action, we get closer to another administration. Have you had time to actually think about that and come up with some answers? I know it's very short after the election. Thanks.
Yeah, Dean? I'll repeat the question. The question is, what of the actions that we're asking the Biden administration to do are Trump-proof, or how long will they take for Trump to undo? So one example that I'll give is actually the OECD is meeting next week to agree on ECA ban on financing oil and gas. This actually happened right before the first Trump administration for ECA's supporting coal finance, and that passed. And even though the United States did not implement because Trump stepped into office, for all of the other OECD countries, that moved forward. And so this next week at the OECD is a critical moment for the Biden administration to support the world in this agreement to phase out $41 billion of financing for oil and gas.
I think honestly, we have an opportunity here at COP29. The Biden administration can fundamentally push for an ambitious NCQG number, right? And it's not 1 trillion, by the way. We want 5 trillion. And it starts with the US taking a leadership role. But again, it does also provide us with an opportunity, right? We get to finally see who actually does want to tackle the climate crisis. And with Trump coming in, it's either everyone's going to go behind Trump's back and actually have and double down on all their ambitions, or actually going to have genuine, actual leaders stepping up and saying, despite and the lack of a US leadership within the fight for the climate crisis, we actually have genuine leaders stepping up and paving the way for all of us to collectively have a climate ambition and a climate goal that is actually people-centered and socially governed. So it's actually also an opportunity, but as well, just to answer the question, Biden and his administration can really fundamentally push for a new NCQG that will really empower the global south who've been historically been disadvantaged in these climate talks. Thanks.
Yes, 100% agree. And I will just say in terms of the US context, number one, filling federal judicial vacancies is a very durable thing. Unfortunately, we know that very well from the Trump administration. The Biden administration should push and work with Congress to do that very quickly. I will also say, we talked about CP2 and LNG projects. We talked about the Dakota Access Pipeline. Of course, Trump can try to attack and advance these projects illegally. And there is a very strong case that's already in the public record that neither of these projects pass the public interest test. The government will have to remake that whole case. That takes many, many, many months, and that gives more time for litigation, grassroots pushback, throwing sand in the gears, life-saving time to prevent these mega-polluting fossil fuel projects from going forward.
All right, and with that, our time is over. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here, and our panelists will be available outside of the room for any additional questions.